Do you prioritize yourself, or does that seem selfish? So we're working on a 4-part series about self-love, and this is the 3rd part. First week we talked about, is self-love selfish? The second part is how we can love ourselves by how we talk to ourselves. And today we're talking about how prioritizing ourselves is self-love. And that's what we're talking about today. When we love others, and we're kind people on this podcast, what that means to us is we're usually interested in their thoughts, we're interested in their feelings, we're interested in their opinions, their wants, their desires. We care about their mental and physical safety, and those are all something that are very important to us when we're loving somebody else. Well, that's the same love we should be giving ourselves, because like God said in the Bible, we should love others as we love ourselves. So we really have to start from that place. And I do need to say a little disclaimer, because I just mentioned when we talk about relationships, we prioritize people, wants, desires, and all of that. A narcissist doesn't do that. So they actually don't prioritize the other person's thought, feelings, opinion, their mental and physical safety, which is very hard for us kind girls to understand, because according to us, that is what a relationship is, and that is what you do. But I did want to just say that little disclaimer that a narcissist or very selfish personality doesn't do that. So back to loving ourselves and doing that for ourselves. And just like I said, Jesus says to love others as you love yourself. Well, in order to prioritize yourself, you have to know yourself. And that can be a hard thing. I think as kind girls, we're easily, caring about others and not really focusing on what do we want, what is important to us, because we tend to be so externally focused, caring about others. So you have to, first of all, know yourself. We have to know ourselves. We have to know that we are more than enough. We have to know that we are lovable and that we are worthy. And we have to advocate for ourselves. Those are some big steps. Like, that can sound really easy to a different kind of person, but for a kind girl, those are some big steps. So my biggest hindrance for loving myself and prioritizing myself was the message, think of others more important than yourself. And so I constantly put myself on the back burner. And as I've talked about before, that had some interesting effects. So later I also adopted that I'm not enough. And that came from just constant criticism in my previous marriage. So those were some things that I had to really kind of overcome. It didn't help that, I was married to someone, for 22 years that would probably be the covert narcissist scale, or also an autistic scale, a little bit, a high functioning autism. And they just didn't have empathy, couldn't see other points of view, and my thoughts and opinions and feelings were not really relevant to the relationship. And so even trying to advocate for myself, that led to consequences of being ignored for multiple days. And then that was the chronic pattern that was super unhealthy for me. So that wasn't good. But on my side of the street, I was a recovering high functional codependent, or I am a recovering high functional codependent. And that means I was overly concerned about thoughts and feelings and taking care of him at the expense of myself regularly. And that was not healthy. So what do you need? I think this was a really good question for me, because I often thought like, oh, you need food, clothing, shelter. That's all that we need. And I later discovered, no, we need a lot of other things. And, the importance of prioritizing our own needs is super important. So I have a list, and I got this is in the Unravel Notebook. If you haven't got this on Amazon, this is super helpful in unraveling and going from a kind girl that attracts some not so healthy relationships to just a very healthy person that attracts amazing relationships. But this is about how God made us with needs, and this comes from Henry Cloud and John Townsend, a book of how to have difficult conversations. And this is what he said that we need: our need for connection, our need for freedom from control, our need for unconditional love, our need for equality and mutuality, our need for physical safety, our need for emotional and mental safety, our need to express talents and interest, our need for rest, our need for pleasure, our need for healing. When I first read that list, it shocked me because I didn't realize that I needed all those things, but I could definitely tell you that I was not thriving in the situation, and I didn't have a lot of those things in my previous marriage, and it was very challenging to me. So knowing our needs is our job to figure out and to advocate for our needs. So that's a whole nother thing. We have to be able to understand our needs and then be able to verbalize it in a way the other person can receive it. And I'm just going to be honest with you. Sometimes you're in a relationship where the other person is not going to receive it no matter what. And it is still our part to learn how to communicate and try to, reach a communication part where we're both communicating well and understanding one another. But I had to come up with a whole new vocabulary after I got out of that relationship and worked on the healing of myself. And now that I'm in just a beautiful marriage, I had to learn though so much. I had a lot of deficiencies in my knowledge. And one of the things was the vocabulary. First of all, to understand the situation I was in previously, because as far as I could tell, my previous relationship, there was a definite disconnect with him, but I didn't have the words as far as like what was really going on there until his counselor let me know that he was, high functioning on the autism scale and gave me a little bit more information. And that was super helpful for me to understand it. But not having the words is huge. And that I think it's in the first 10 episodes I talk about like the vocabulary. It could be so profoundly helpful. Things like gaslighting, love bombing, and just understanding words that we aren't aware of. But also we need to understand words when it comes to advocating for ourselves. And that is that has to be something learned, because I don't think naturally we want to advocate for ourselves or even know how. So things like I had to learn, like I would like to make a simple request, or this is important to me, or this is me being vulnerable, or even just speaking truthfully, like thank you and that's not for me, or I appreciate you asking and I'm not interested, or hey, I think there's another way of looking at this, or this isn't my jam, this isn't. So really speaking out, not just in my relationship, but in all aspects of my life. And as a realtor, being in leadership, just being able to speak freely and openly about that. When everybody is doing that, that is a way healthier dynamic, because we all have different perspectives of things. It's like a beach ball and like different colors of a beach ball. We each have a different perspective, and when we can bring that together in like a business or anything else or any type of relationship, it's far more fabulous. For me, my life was the kind girl, doing the right things, being a Christian, marrying a Christian guy, and really the relationship was very destructive to me, and I ended up in the psych ward twice and got labeled bipolar at the time, and it was just a very challenging, awful situation. And so there wasn't mutuality in working things out. And so I chose a divorce. And then I just questioned myself. I questioned all the whys and questioned my beliefs that got me there, and all of my people pleasing and my serving, and really had to rediscover myself and healthy relationship with God and myself and others. And it was a process. So I created the Unravel Notebook, and that was the process that helped me go from that situation to living a life abundantly as a realtor and a life coach, and really thriving in a beautiful marriage. And that's what I want to help others do as well, and create their life by intention to live brighter one day at a time. I also had to realize, so this is talking about like the 5 years of healing for me, and just doing this whole Unravel Notebook for myself. I had to realize what was important to me. So I got out of the previous relationship because it was so destructive. I would have been in the psych ward or on medication the rest of my life. And you can hear all about that, like I said, in the first 10 episodes. But as I got out of it, because I wanted to be able to take care of my kids, and I just wasn't in a state anymore that I could do that, I look back at that situation and I think, wow, I actually, I did it for my kids. And part of me is like a little sad that I didn't do that for me, because it was so destructive to me. And I'm just thankful that I did do it for the children, and that I'm proud of that. But I also, like, in the process of healing and recovering my own high functioning codependency and my relationship challenges and my thinking, I realized something that was super important to me. And I think I knew this when I was younger, but kind of lost sight of it in the relationship. And I realized that intimacy is a priority to me. Like, I really believed, like, when I first met my first husband, my goal was to marry my best friend. And he was, when we were dating. And then that was it. But that was really important to me. And so as I was getting out and doing the work on myself, I realized something that's really important to me is intimacy. Like, and I do want to be married to my best friend. And I'm so thankful that I am married to my best friend. And we have a very intimate relationship. And that just feels so good to me. Not everybody feels that way. And it could be that security is more important or something else. But it's important to know what is ingrained in us is super important. For me, I would have been happy to have like a small house, little apartment, whatever, and just be in an intimate relationship. It was that high of a value to me. And for me to have intimacy, I would have need to be known and seen. And that was the epitome of what I wasn't previously. And in this relationship, my marriage now, I'm very known and seen, and I know and see him, and it's a beautiful thing. But if you think about the things that we have to overcome as kind girls, we have to know ourselves, we have to be able to express ourselves and give the words and advocate for ourselves. And then really to have a great dynamic, it has to be a mutual thing going on in a relationship. And those are some big things that we're talking about. So couples that don't have that right now, but they're wanting to and they're open to both working on that, I really recommend a great book called How We Love. And that is a beautiful book on knowing that is kind of done together, where you can create more of that intimacy. Because honestly, some of it's just a matter of we didn't learn how and all of that. And it is a learnable thing. So I also want to say something about, like, I hear a lot, like, I'm staying together for the kids. And I think that's an interesting idea, because it's very, like, I look back on when I got a divorce and the ages of my kids and where they're at now. Because that was over like 6 years ago. And so it's just very interesting to see my kids now. And they're all much healthier, emotionally intelligent, secure. And a lot of that has to do that my ex and I do not like manipulate and use our kids against each other, anything like that. We try to be very respectful of that, and that's really huge. But if I would have stayed in that relationship, I would have given my kids a blueprint of how relationships are supposed to be. And I feel like that would have been a huge disservice. For example, I see this because it does affect our kids, our decisions. I really see this in my daughter Haley. So she was 14 when we got the divorce, and now she's 20. And she was one of the kids that I really wasn't willing to kind of see the situation, which is fine. I mean, she's a kid. And so there just wasn't much teachability. And so I'm like, life has a way of teaching us things if we don't want to learn them the first time. So she really decided at that point that she didn't believe in love. She didn't want to be touched, stuff like that, which is sad. And I'm like, I want to respect her journey and where she's at. And so I did that. So it's interesting now, though, she is in a relationship of a guy that she actually loves, and he loves her, and she's really learning things. For example, she's like, Mom, he cares about my thoughts and my feelings. Like, they're important. I keep wanting to invalidate my feelings. And she wanted to do that because that's how she was raised. And I just tell her, I'm like, I'm sorry, that was part of that and that didn't serve you. But she's realizing that her feelings are actually very helpful. They're information. And they're information saying, hey, I need to advocate for myself. I need to say something. It's telling you information, and that's really powerful. So she's learning in this relationship how to be, super healthy as far as a relationship, and that relationships are a lot of work, and that you really do need to be equal and friends. So I think that's fabulous that she's learning that. And I could see, like, oh gosh, she really didn't know her thoughts and feelings were valued because it wasn't a validating environment for thoughts and feelings and how other people felt when she was being raised as much, and I was part of that. So it's very interesting how, the effect on each of my children. But Haley's example really stood out to me recently because thank you, Jesus, that she does believe in love now, and that she does believe that you can be really good friends, and it can be a beautiful thing. And that makes me feel super happy for her. So basically, there's a lot of work I did, and it's all in the Unravel Notebook. And this is a way for anyone to do their own unraveling and become their own version of themselves, and whatever that looks like, and have intimacy with God and with yourself and with others, which I think is precursors. When you know that you're absolutely loved by God, that you're more than enough, that is just such a beautiful base. And when you treat yourself like that and have that relationship with ourselves, then that sets us up for healthier, dynamic, beautiful relationships with others, not just romantic relationships, but any relationship. And that's just fabulous. And a great result of all of this is that I have a husband now that we are very intimate. We are known. We very much care about each other's thoughts and feelings. And it's honestly, we just we laugh about it because we're like, gosh, we just feel like this is a little piece of heaven. And I really believe that's what our relationships can be like. It can be healthy, dynamic, and loving. So we're growing 1% every day. That's what this podcast is for. I really with this one, I really think about where are you not prioritizing yourself when it comes to your physical health, mental health, with your needing to have emotional and mental safety, your rest, your pleasure, all of those things. That's a great list on page 15 of the Unravel Notebook. And really learning the skill of advocating. I also recommend, and you hear me say this a lot, the book Boundary Boss. That's a great tool to learn how to have the words to express your boundaries within a relationship. Super helpful. So I believe in you. Let's all grow 1% every day and have a great day.